The Harbor City Museum stood 3 blocks from the river, between a coffee shop and a courthouse built in the 70s. Every weekday morning, the street smelled like roasted beans and cold metal from the water. Inside the museum, the climate control hummed with the quiet confidence of expensive machinery. Temperature, 70 degrees. Humidity, 50%. Light, carefully filtered. Nothing in the gallery changed quickly here. Paintings preferred stable air and predictable days. At 8:12 a.m., the first guard unlocked the Impressionist wing. His name was Carl, a former Marine who walked the same route every morning. Same steps, same paintings. He paused in front of a coastal landscape by a 19th century painter named Arthur Bell. Carl frowned. The painting looked brighter, not cleaner, not restored. Brighter. Like the surface had learned how to catch every light in the room. He leaned closer. The brushstrokes were gone. The canvas showed a perfect mirror, not glass, not metal. Just a flawless, reflective surface stretched exactly where the painting had been. Carl shifted his head left. The gallery appeared in the reflection. Lights, floor, the opposite wall. But the frame still held Bell's signature at the bottom. He checked the next painting. And the next, 4 masterpieces had turned into mirrors overnight. No broken glass, no alarms, no missing frames. Just reflections where paintings used to live. And one small detail that made Carl uneasy. The mirrors were not mounted. They were painted directly onto the canvases. The police arrived before the museum opened to the public. 2 patrol cars, 1 detective, 1 very irritated curator. Detective Maria Lopez walked slowly along the gallery wall, hands behind her back. She studied each frame like she expected the paintings to suddenly apologize. They just turned into mirrors? She asked. The curator nodded, pale and sweating. Those were originals. Bell, Hartley, Dunford, and Reyes. Millions of dollars. Maria leaned closer to one canvas. Her reflection stared back with unnerving clarity. No seams, no glass panel, no metal sheet, just mirror. She tapped the surface gently with a knuckle. Canvas underneath, flexible, real. Any alarms last night? She asked. Nothing triggered, the security chief said. Doors sealed, motion sensors quiet. Cameras running the entire time. Maria pointed toward the painting. Then someone walked in, replaced 4 paintings with mirrors, and walked out. The curator shook his head quickly. No replacement. These are the original canvases. Maria paused. Original canvases. Yes. He pointed at the corner. The signatures are embedded in the paint layers. Our conservator confirmed it. Maria looked again. The frames were old, the backing boards untouched, which meant the thief had not swapped paintings. Somehow the paintings themselves had changed, and that made absolutely no sense. 2 days later, the official explanation arrived. Insurance investigators flew in from Chicago with laptops, suits, and confident voices. They examined the canvases, interviewed staff, and reviewed security footage frame by frame. The conclusion came quickly. A restoration fraud. According to the report, someone had applied a chemical cleaning treatment to the paintings weeks earlier. The treatment reacted badly with the varnish layers. Over time, the varnish degraded and formed a reflective surface. Think of it like over-polishing a car, the lead investigator explained during a press briefing. Too much solvent can change the top layer. Reporters scribbled. Museum officials nodded uneasily. The explanation sounded technical enough to be believable. The paintings, they said, were not stolen. They were chemically damaged. Insurance would cover restoration attempts, though the original images might never return. The case closed within 48 hours. Most people accepted the explanation, except one person, because a week later, 3 more paintings in a private gallery in Phoenix turned into mirrors overnight. Same perfect reflections, same untouched frames, and the same impossible detail. Every mirrored canvas still carried the original artist's signature. Daniel Reed started his mornings with microscopes and bad coffee. His lab sat behind the conservation wing of the National Museum in Washington. No marble floors here, just steel tables, solvent bottles, and shelves full of anonymous paint chips sealed in plastic slides. Daniel wasn't a detective. He was a materials scientist who specialized in art conservation. When a museum wanted to know what something was made of, they called Daniel. At 8:30 a.m., he lowered a microscope lens over a fragment smaller than a grain of rice. Oil paint, mid-20th century, titanium white, linseed binder. He wrote it down without drama. Daniel didn't trust first impressions. Paintings lied constantly. Varnish yellowed. Pigments faded. Restorers touched things they shouldn't. Science cut through the stories. He used 3 rules. Look at the layers, check the chemistry, never assume the artist is the problem. His phone buzzed on the table. A colleague from Phoenix sent a photo, a gallery wall. 3 empty reflections staring back from antique frames. Daniel stared at the screen for a long moment. Then he zoomed in. Not glass, not metal plate, canvas. He leaned closer to the image and muttered quietly to himself, "That's not damage." He recognized the surface immediately. Someone had grown a mirror. The call came 2 hours later from an old friend named Marcus Hale at the FBI art crime team in New York. Marcus spoke fast. He always did. 3 museums, 2 private galleries. Same thing every time. Paintings become mirrors overnight. Daniel leaned back in his chair. I read the insurance report. Yeah, Marcus said. Chemical cleaning accident. Daniel snorted softly. That explanation is nonsense. Marcus was quiet for a moment. So what is it? Daniel stared at the photo again. Its surface isn't varnish. It's metallic. You're saying someone plated the canvas? Exactly. Marcus sighed. Okay, that leaves us with 2 options. Daniel waited. Option 1, Marcus said. This is some new art prank, and we look stupid investigating it. Option 2? Someone found a way to steal paintings without removing them from the wall. Daniel slowly closed the microscope cover. If option 2 was true, the originals were already gone, and nobody had noticed. When's the next flight to Harbor City? Daniel asked. Marcus chuckled. I'll take that as a yes. Daniel grabbed his notebook and jacket. Bad explanations bothered him, but elegant crimes bothered him even more. The Harbor City Museum reopened the gallery for Daniel after hours. No visitors, no cameras, just quiet lights and 4 mirrors pretending to be paintings. Marcus stood nearby with 2 agents. Daniel didn't talk much when he worked. He moved slowly, like a mechanic listening to an engine. First, he photographed the canvas surface. Then he removed the frame backing with careful hands. The wood screws were untouched. No recent tool marks. He lifted the canvas slightly. Same stretcher bars. Same linen weave. Same museum catalog tag from 1932. Everything matched the original documentation. Daniel nodded once. Good thief, he murmured. He clipped a tiny silver flake from the surface and placed it into a sample vial. Under a portable microscope, the layer looked like frost, millions of microscopic crystals. Marcus leaned closer. So? That's silver. Marcus blinked. Like metal silver? Daniel nodded. Pure metallic silver, deposited directly onto the paint surface. Marcus frowned. How do you plate metal onto canvas without destroying it? Daniel didn't answer immediately. Instead, he studied the gallery lights reflecting across the mirror surface. Perfect, too perfect. Then he noticed something small near the bottom edge. A faint yellow halo around the artist's signature, not paint, residue. Daniel tapped the canvas lightly. Everything here is normal, he said, except one thing. Marcus crossed his arms. What? Daniel pointed to the halo. This silver didn't start here. He paused. It grew here. The second clue appeared 3 states away. 2 weeks after the Harbor City incident, Marcus called again. His voice carried the tired rhythm of someone chasing a pattern that refused to show itself. Boston this time, he said. Private collector. Climate-controlled vault. Daniel arrived the next morning. The vault looked nothing like a museum gallery. Thick steel door, concrete walls, cameras in every corner, a room designed for paranoia. Inside, a single painting hung on a temporary rack, or what used to be a painting. Another mirror. The owner, a nervous man named Philip Grant, stood nearby rubbing his temples. That piece never even left storage, he said. No public display, no restoration work. Nobody touched it. Daniel examined the surface. Same silver layer, same flawless reflection, but something else caught his attention. The air in the vault smelled faintly sweet, not like oil paint, like chemicals. Daniel walked slowly along the walls until he found a stainless steel cabinet used for conservation supplies. Inside were bottles labeled for humidity control and mold prevention. Most were sealed. One wasn't. Daniel picked up the bottle and read the label. Silver nitrate solution. Marcus frowned. That used in painting? Daniel shook his head. No. He looked back at the mirrored canvas. It's used to make mirrors. But the bottle alone didn't explain anything. Silver nitrate was common in conservation labs, and nothing in the vault connected it to the silver coating on the painting. 2 clues, no bridge between them. Later that evening, Daniel sat at a diner across the street from the museum. Marcus attacked a cheeseburger, while Daniel filled pages of a notebook with quiet calculations: silver nitrate, canvas, humidity, temperature. None of it fit together cleanly. Marcus wiped his hands and leaned back. "You know what bothers me?" he said. Daniel looked up. "What?" Marcus pointed toward the window, where the neon diner sign reflected across the glass. "Mirrors?" Daniel waited. Marcus continued, half joking. "If someone wanted to steal paintings, why leave mirrors behind?" Daniel said nothing. Marcus shrugged. "Why not blank canvases? Or fake copies?" The neon reflection flickered across Daniel's coffee cup. Suddenly he sat up straighter. "Because mirrors hide something," he said quietly. Marcus blinked. "What?" Daniel turned the notebook toward him. "Think about how mirrors are made." Marcus stared at the page. "Silver, liquid, surface." Daniel tapped the table once. "You don't attach a mirror to glass," he said. "You grow the mirror directly on it." Marcus slowly leaned forward. "And the canvas?" Daniel nodded. "Or became the glass." For the first time since the case began, the clues pointed in the same direction. Not damage, not restoration, chemistry. Back in his Washington lab, Daniel prepared a small test. Nothing dramatic, just a square of primed canvas clamped onto a tray. He worked like a chef following a precise recipe. First solution: silver nitrate dissolved in water. Second solution: a reducing agent made from sugar and ammonia. Marcus watched from the doorway. "You're making a mirror?" Daniel nodded. "This reaction has been around since the 19th century. He poured the mixed liquid across the canvas. At the right conditions, silver ions turn into metallic silver. Marcus folded his arms. "And coat whatever surface they touch." "Exactly." The clear liquid spread slowly across the fabric. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the surface darkened. A thin gray film formed. Within seconds, it brightened, shiny, reflective. Marcus stepped closer. "Well, I'll be damned." Daniel tilted the tray so the light hit the surface. A perfect mirror had formed across the canvas. "But that's the easy part," Daniel said. Marcus frowned. "What do you mean?" Daniel replaced the canvas with a second sample. This time he changed only one variable: temperature. He warmed the solution slightly before pouring. The reaction exploded into life. Silver crystals spread across the surface faster than before. But something unexpected happened. The silver didn't stop at the primer layer. It sank deeper, through microscopic cracks, into the paint beneath. Daniel stared at the sample. Marcus leaned over his shoulder. "What's wrong?" Daniel turned the canvas under the light. The mirror surface was intact, but underneath, the paint layer had separated, quietly dissolved from its base. Daniel spoke slowly. "If someone controlled this reaction carefully," he tapped the mirrored surface, "the silver would grow here." Then he flipped the canvas over, and the painting underneath could disappear. Daniel gathered the team in his lab 2 days later. Marcus stood near the steel table with 2 FBI agents. On the table lay 3 things: a primed canvas, 2 glass beakers, and a thin silver mirror Daniel had created the night before. Daniel spoke like a teacher who preferred demonstrations over speeches. "This reaction is called Toland's reaction," he said. "Chemistry students use it to detect certain sugars." He lifted one beaker. Inside this solution are silver ions, dissolved metal. Then he lifted the second. And this one contains a reducing agent. It pushes the silver ions to become solid metal again. Marcus nodded slowly, and the metal sticks to the surface. "Exactly." Daniel poured both solutions into a shallow tray and gently lowered the canvas inside. Normally, the reaction coats glass. That's how traditional mirrors were made in the 19th century. The clear liquid rested on the canvas for several seconds. Then the change began. A gray shimmer spread across the fabric. Within half a minute, the surface had turned reflective. One of the agents leaned closer. "That's exactly what we saw in the museum." Daniel nodded. "But here's the trick." He flipped the test canvas under a bright lamp and pointed to the backside. The linen fibers were stained. "Paintings aren't solid surfaces," he explained. "They're layers: canvas, primer, paint, varnish, all full of microscopic cracks." He traced a finger across the silver film. "If someone prepares the painting first, the solution seeps inside those cracks." Marcus leaned forward. "And dissolves the paint?" "Slowly," Daniel said. The pigments detach from the canvas and lift away with the liquid. One agent frowned. So the painting disappears. Daniel tapped the mirror surface, and the silver seals the evidence. Marcus stared at the canvas, which means the paintings weren't transformed. Daniel nodded once. They were extracted. Once Daniel explained the chemistry, the timeline started to make sense. He laid photographs from the different museums across the table. Step 1, he said. Someone accesses the painting days or weeks earlier. Marcus pointed at the Harbor City Gallery. A restorer or a technician, anyone trusted near the artwork. Daniel nodded. They apply a preparation layer, something invisible that allows liquid to penetrate the paint layers later. Step 2 came next. During the actual theft, Daniel continued, the thief returns with the silver solution. Marcus frowned. In a museum full of cameras? Daniel slid a photo across the table. Night security footage. A worker pushing a maintenance cart labeled humidity calibration equipment. Marcus exhaled slowly. Maintenance. Exactly, Daniel said. No alarms triggered. Humidity systems were regularly serviced. A technician could stand next to a painting for 10 minutes without raising suspicion. Daniel tapped the mirrored canvas photo. The liquid sits on the surface and starts dissolving the paint layers underneath. Marcus followed the logic, and the original paint gets absorbed into the liquid. Right. Daniel pointed again to the silver layer. Meanwhile, the Tollens reaction deposits metallic silver. Within minutes, the painting is gone. What remains looks exactly like a mirror. Same canvas, same frame, same signature. Marcus shook his head. A crime scene that erases itself. Daniel nodded, and most people never question a mirror. The motive appeared when Marcus pulled financial records from recent art auctions. Daniel studied the numbers late into the night. One detail kept repeating. The same consortium of auction houses handled every painting that later turned into a mirror. Different cities, different galleries, but always the same private partnership behind the sale. Marcus circled a name in the documents. Adrian Keller, art dealer, auction strategist, market analyst. Daniel flipped through Keller's interviews in art magazines. Keller spoke constantly about provenance, authenticity, market value. Paintings are only valuable, Keller once said in an interview, because we believe they are original. Daniel leaned back in his chair. Marcus frowned. You thinking what I'm thinking? Daniel nodded. If the originals vanish. Marcus finished the thought. Mohem. Then the copies become priceless. The auction consortium already controlled many authenticated reproductions used for traveling exhibitions and research archives. Perfect replicas, certified by experts, but normally worth only a fraction of the originals. Daniel tapped the mirrored canvas photograph again. Once the real painting disappears, the replica becomes the only surviving version. Marcus whistled softly, and the market price explodes. Daniel nodded, especially if the disappearance looks like chemical damage instead of theft. Marcus closed the file. So Keller doesn't steal paintings. Daniel looked at the mirror sample reflecting the lab lights. He deletes them. Marcus thought the case was almost finished. One suspect, one method, one motive. Then Daniel asked for the auction records going back 5 years, not just the paintings that turned into mirrors. All of them. Marcus sent the request. The spreadsheet arrived an hour later. Hundreds of sales, museums, collectors, estates. Daniel began marking rows quietly with a pencil. Look here, he said. Marcus leaned over the desk. 10 paintings sold through Keller's consortium had later appeared in traveling exhibitions as verified archival reproductions. Perfect duplicates. That was normal in the art world. What wasn't normal was what happened next. Daniel opened another file. Insurance reports, restoration failures, chemical damage, paintings that had supposedly degraded beyond recovery. Marcus felt the pattern forming before Daniel spoke. How many? Marcus asked. Daniel finished counting. 27. Marcus blinked. 27 paintings? Daniel nodded. All declared chemically compromised within the last 4 years. Marcus stared at the mirrored canvas photo on the screen. If Daniel was right, those paintings weren't damaged. They were erased. And somewhere in private vaults or laboratories, their extracted paint layers still existed. 27 masterpieces removed from history without anyone realizing it. Marcus exhaled slowly. This isn't theft. Daniel closed the laptop. It's market engineering. The auction hall in Manhattan smelled faintly of polish and old money. Collectors sat in quiet rows, while assistants carried paintings to the front display stand. Marcus stood near the back with 2 agents. Daniel waited beside the stage. Tonight's feature piece was a coastal landscape by Arthur Bell, the same painting that had turned into a mirror in Harbor City. Except this one wasn't a mirror. It was a perfect reproduction. Adrian Keller stood beside the podium, calm and elegant in a dark suit. The original Bell painting was tragically damaged during a chemical restoration accident. Keller explained to the room. But this archival reproduction remains historically important. Daniel stepped forward. Important, he said, because it's now the only version left. The room quieted. Keller turned toward him politely. And you are? Daniel Reed. He placed a small mirrored canvas on the podium. Silver deposition using Tollin's reaction. Daniel said calmly. The same chemistry used in every gallery incident. He held up a vial filled with dark residue, pigments dissolved from the original Bell painting. A murmur moved through the audience. Keller's smile never changed. That's an interesting theory, he said smoothly. Daniel met his eyes. You didn't steal paintings, Daniel said. You replaced them with reflections. Keller adjusted his cuff. Art markets depend on perception, Mr. Reed. No confession, no denial. Just a quiet understanding passing through the room. Marcus stepped forward with the agents, and Keller finally stopped smiling. A month later, the mirrors were still hanging in Harbor City. Insurance lawyers argued. Museums investigated. Auction houses quietly froze several sales. Daniel returned to the same gallery where Carl had first noticed something strange. The mirrored canvases reflected the quiet room perfectly. Lights, walls, visitors walking past. He stood in front of Arthur Bell's frame again. The painting was gone. In its place, the museum now displayed a small plaque explaining the chemical theft. Daniel tilted his head slightly. His reflection stared back. Silver metal grown from invisible liquid, a reaction discovered by chemists nearly 200 years ago. Simple chemistry. Elegant crime. Behind him, a tourist looked into the mirror and asked a simple question. Why didn't anyone notice the paintings disappearing? Daniel watched the reflection of the empty frame. Then he answered quietly, because mirrors show exactly what we expect to see. The gallery lights shimmered across the silver surface, and the reflection looked perfectly real. Which leaves one uncomfortable question. If a masterpiece can vanish and leave only its reflection behind, who really owns the image you're looking at?